up, Ham Fam? Welcome back to another episode of Hard as a Mother. Before we begin, in the spirit of reconciliation, we want to acknowledge that we live, work, and play on Treaty 7 territory, the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Nations, including Siksika, Piikani, and Kainai, the Tsuut'ina Nation, and Stoney Nakoda First Nations. We acknowledge all the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries. So, hey everyone, it's your girl, your hostess with the mostest, Jizzy. And if you're new and just tuning in, we're just two regular moms creating a safe space for other moms, dads, caregivers, or anyone really to share in the realness and honesty that comes with parenthood while also being able to laugh at ourselves. And if you're not new and you're an avid follower, then welcome back and we appreciate the hell out of you. And as always, I'm joined by none other than the ever so beautiful and feisty Harley.
Wow, thank you so much. I am feisty. Holy moly.
Feistiest person I know.
Yeah, first of all, before we segue, can somebody Giselle needs to show this ring that she has right now. I need to pull right now. This doesn't look like a Frenchie. It looks like one of those cats that is I don't know what those cats are called. The
you
one
guys,
that's skinned.
So
look at it.
Hey Friday Jr., Katrina, gifted me this ring, and it's my dog. And she sent it to me when she was living in Australia. And I asked her when I got here, I was like, do you like my ring? And she made this face. She was like, oh. And I was like, that's how I feel about the ring. Anyways.
I don't like to lie. Anyways.
Let's not talk about the ring anymore.
I just wanted to point it out. Anyways, I am so excited to be back. I just wanted to, I posted something on our feed earlier about how real mental health is because you never think that it's going to happen to you. Although that's not the topic. I just wanted to say that, I kind of wasn't on social, on our social because I don't know. It's so weird. It just hit me so hard that I'm very, very disconnected. But anyways, I just want to say I'm happy to be back and make sure that if you feel that way, reach out, make sure that you have the support that you need. So just a quick reminder to make sure to check our YouTube and also subscribe. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and you know what? We have a couple TikToks under our belt. I did one in Victoria, but it took literally forever. So
I think she drained her battery. Yeah. Doing one TikTok. And we were trying to leave the house and she's just hold on, recording.
It was ridiculous. So shout out and props to all those people who have time. I just don't have time for TikTok right now. Okay. So anyways, I can't believe that we're almost entering into the holidays. Q4. I don't know why I don't call it Christmas season. It's always Q4.
Because you're in sales.
I'm in sales. I'm in business. And it's always Q4, push. Anyways, we're going into the holiday months. It's going to be busy. And also my baby boy is officially going to turn 16. He's going to get his license. Halloween's around the corner and Christmas. Before you know it, 2022. And hopefully COVID is gone by then.
Yeah, let's just hope that 2022 is not a garbage fire like this year and last year, because I'm just over it.
Yeah, so today's episode is brought to you by one of our generous diamond sponsors for our golf tournament, Soko Local, which is an online search engine for local products that aims to support local businesses by making it easier to find and shop local products. All you have to do is search for a product and get hundreds of results from local businesses in your city. And the best part, it's totally free. There's no commission or fees, and purchases are made directly from the business. Check it out and support your small business community at sokolocal.com or download the app. Available on iOS and Android. Yeah. So anyways, now that we got that out of the way, I want to introduce to you guys. It's been a minute because she was supposed to come here a long time ago. So today she is a lovely mom of two, owner and operator of Kristin. Sorry, I'm gonna butcher your last name.
Fortier.
Fortier. Who lets me do these introductions? I'm horrible. Consulting. She's a chartered professional accountant with over 15 years of corporate finance. I love you. I love finance, but I'm not, Anyways, I love numbers. I'm sorry. I get so excited. And accounting experience and 3 years of entrepreneurship. She facilitates female entrepreneurs, working mamas, and they're ready to kick when they're ready to kick and overwhelm and align their money values and goals. We want to welcome Kristin.
Hi,
Welcome. Sorry, I butchered that, guys. I have a track problem and I didn't space it up. So sorry. Continue.
That's all right. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. And so I just want to mention to our listeners that Kristin actually reached out to us for the opportunity to be here and share her knowledge in the hopes of helping our female or mom listeners be confident in their finances, because as we know, it's pretty common that women of the household are the ones who handle the finances and make the spending decisions, or they have their own side hustles where they need to manage their money. So I think it's really great that you actively seek out these opportunities to help others, and it says a lot about your passion and your character.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I was so excited to reach out to you guys. My friend Renee was a guest a couple months back.
We love
and
Renee.
So
Shout out Renee.
So when I watched her episode, I was like, maybe I can get in here too and have a bit of a conversation.
Well, I'm so glad you did. So tell us, what's your story and how did you become so passionate about something like this?
Yeah, so it's interesting because nothing's linear the way we want it to be. So things kind of evolve and shift. And so I had my son 4 years ago, and I grew up, my parents owned their own business. And so I grew up in that entrepreneurial world, but it wasn't really my idea. And so I worked in corporate for a long time. I had my son. I went back to work, and in the first 6 months back to work, he was sick. He touched everything. He was home so much. And in my corporate world, there wasn't that flexibility to just be home and be supported. So I felt like I was failing work. I was failing my son, my family, and I wasn't even on the list of people who were making any kind of wasn't of any value, right? I was worried about work and I was worried about my family. And so I was like, if I was an entrepreneur, I would have more flexibility. I would get to set my own schedule. And so it started to ruminate, like, what does that look like? I love finance. I love working with people. So I'm like, I'm not going to work in a little office all by myself and never talk to anyone. And so it just started out. And so I really wanted to work in finance and kind of as an outsourced kind of CFO for entrepreneurs. So small businesses, as they're growing, but they need some different expertise to come in. And so it's been evolving. And in this last year, it's been more conversations around money and wellness. And I've been talking to all these women who are doing such amazing things, and yet they're so like shut down. And like you start having these conversations about money and they're instantly like, oh, I'm not good at math, or I'm not good with money. And these are people who are like running their homes, running a business, probably working part-time or full-time. Some are homeschooling. Like, they're people that I'm absolutely honored to like share a phone call with.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how do you feel this way? Like, it broke my heart. And so you'd start having these conversations, and like you actually could see a physical transformation as people just like put it out there, what was bothering them and what they felt like they were stuck on. And like by the end of 30 minutes, like you're sitting up straighter and you're smiling and you're laughing. And it's so amazing to see how quickly we can go from being overwhelmed to like in an excited place, right? You didn't solve all your problems, but you just see all the opportunities that you were in too deep before to even recognize were around you.
Right.
What do you what was the most common problem that women have? I'm sure it was kind of repetitive of why we have that problem. Like, I mean, we run our household, we balance checkbooks, we do all of that. But why do you think that it could be because that's what we were trained to be when we were kids, or it's a learned behavior? What was the common problem?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just that it's generational, right? Like, we don't sit and talk about money. Right. We're told, you're younger and you may be asked about money, and somebody said, oh, that's rude, we don't ask that. Or, you didn't learn about it in school. So we never had a foundation that made it okay for us to be curious about money, right? And so I talk about money and I talk about finances, and finances to me are like all the topics around money, but we still don't talk about them. And the biggest thing is just we never slow down enough to be curious. So we're always like, is there money in the bank account? Yes, there is. Okay. Is there room on my credit card? Okay, there is a little bit left. We're okay. And so it's very much like just kind of that survival mechanism of like, we're okay right now. So we don't really need to dive into it. We don't need to look at our spending habits or what our long-term goals are. Like, everybody's kind of in that surviving headspace. And through pandemic, I think that's just absolutely multiplied.
Right. So you must have had a lot of new businesses past year, would you say?
Yeah, it's been interesting. And I always laugh a little because the coaches that I know and talk to, they always talk about how like you're your own best client. And it was so funny because earlier this year I was working with somebody else and I was saying, you know, like I feel like I have to provide free value. Like I just want to help everyone and I can't charge people because they're struggling in their businesses. And this coach was like, well, who told you that? And I was like, oh, nobody. Like nobody told me that. That's my own money story.
Yeah.
Of like, I can't charge people because I just want to help them and everybody's struggling. And so it's so interesting because, yeah, I've had so many conversations. My business is doing, you know, we're 3 years in and it's doing well. And that's been through pandemic. But it's so interesting how you see your own money stories actually like bubble up and you're like, oh yeah, like you're always doing the work. There's no like, I did the work and now I'm done and good.
So it's kind of like you learn more about yourself the more you delve into your own career.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like us.
Totally. It's that awareness, right? Like the moment you're like, oh, I'm going to go buy a red car. That's what I've been test driving. Then you see red cars everywhere, right? Or something kind of random that you want or you're really excited about. And then you see it more and more. It's that awareness that starts to come up.
So because you could come from a corporate world, and I mean, so have I. Do you think it's easier to know and manage how to spend the corporate the corporate dollars versus your own personal finance? Because I'm so good at it, and sometimes I'm so shitty with my own personal finance, and I'm like, why do I protect that money and the spending, but I don't protect my own personal interest? It's crazy. I think probably the last 6 years is where I'm like, okay, get a grip of your finance. It's ridiculous. So I'm like, I'm saving all this people money. Like I find pocket holes doing it, but I can't do it in my own personal life. Do you find that women that you speak to that have come out of being an entrepreneur feel the same way? Like they're so good at that and then they just don't know how to do it in their own personal?
It's super interesting that you said that because no, I actually haven't found that to be the case. It seems really consistent of like people are either love it and they want to know and they want to ask the questions and dig into it, or they don't want to know at all. And so whether that be personally or professionally, it's been pretty consistent. I think for you, it might be part of your persona, right? Like we have different personas based on what we're doing, right? Our relationships, our activities. And so for you in the corporate world, that might be part of like the strategy that you really enjoy with the job.
Yeah.
Right? And then when you go home, you're like, oh, I don't want to do that. Like I would much rather just relax, like everything's good. So I think it's a little bit of a different perspective and a different view on what you're trying to do.
Yeah, when I think about my own finances, I mean, it's always like, oh, it's okay, it's mine. I feel like because there's no accountability, but I do have accountability to all these other people within an organization, I suppose. So my next question is going to lead to, sure, how do you manage your finance when you feel like how do you even do it? How do you even start? Like, walk me through like your conversation with your a client.
Yeah, so we start really basic because the thing is money is so individual, right? None of us are in the exact same spot. None of us are dealing with the exact same stories, experience, debt, savings, whatever that is. And so it really starts from a place of, you know, what's keeping you up at night? So like what's stressing you out? Like what like wakes you up in the middle of the night and turns your stomach, because that's usually that big thing that you can ignore all day long. And then your body and brain are like, no, this is still an issue. Mm-hmm. So it's usually like we start with something like that because it's not that that's the easy win, but that might be the biggest thing that would make a huge difference in our overall well-being. And so we start with some of those conversations, and then it's, you know, looking for those small wins, because, you know, you can Google like how to budget, how to save, all those things. But if it was easy, we would all be perfect. We would all be really good at this.
Yeah.
And it's the fact that you have to start with those small wins. So like, what's one change you can make this week? Maybe it's, you know, you don't order out supper 3 times, you do it once. Mm-hmm. And I think we often, we forget that even those tiny steps are still progress.
Right.
And those are the tiny things that our brain is like, oh, okay, like this didn't hurt us so bad, right? You took a few expenses off the table and you didn't miss them. Okay, so that's a small win, you know? And I think it's when you really shift that perspective of like going from like that all or nothing, right? When you're at that, it seems so big and it seems so overwhelming. And it's like, okay, no, like what's something manageable? Because then you'll build up those habits.
Yeah.
Right. And so as we build up those habits, that's where our confidence starts to build.
Right.
And that confidence piece is a huge part of our money.
Yeah. And I guess I never really looked at it that way, but that's a really good thing because Har tells me all the time is like, she's helping me with my whole like weight loss journey and stuff. And she's like, stop quitting things cold turkey. Stop saying you can't eat rice. Just make little changes, little lifestyle changes that are going to make a big difference in the end rather than trying to tackle everything at once and then getting overwhelmed and then you're setting yourself up for failure. And so I try to remember that, but that's interesting that I've never looked at it from the financial perspective with that advice. And plus when you were mentioning how to Google how to save money and budget, like I've done that before. I look on Google for like ways I can budget better, but those are not tailored to what I like my lifestyle, right? It's very generic. It's very like cut and paste. And so I think that's also why it doesn't work most of the time.
Yeah. And if you don't enjoy the process, like it's a new habit that you're trying to form. So it's not like you're going to do it once and be like, this is the best thing ever. Maybe you'll have that reaction, but not likely. But if you do those small things and you say like, okay, I like this, but I think I could add in this piece or this fits better for my family or my personality, then you're making those tweaks that are for you, right? They're things that you really value. And then you're much more likely to actually stick with it because you find those things that actually work for you instead of the Google where there's a million things that we could try.
Exactly.
And you don't like any of them, so you just stop doing them.
Yeah, it's so crazy how every journey you go on, it's all the small steps. And I mean, I tell her, I mean, even yesterday I was having a conversation. She's sending me links on Amazon. I was like, fuck, are you serious right now? Because this is a bad idea. So I was like, I'm not going to look at it. But instead I ended up looking at it. And then I was like, oh, I'm going to buy this. And then by then I just bought basically every link she sent me. True story. I'm serious.
But it was really good deals.
Yeah. So I wasn't going to, but then I realized, okay, if I need to buy this anyways, it was a lot of stuff that was staple. Like there was like this container she sent me and I was like, I want this so bad to organize my blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you know what? Not now, because I bought something else, which I bought a pair of leggings.
50% off.
50% off. And then we were like talking about it. And I was like, you know what? I was like, I barely buy anything because I feel like I'm so hardcore with my finance now. Like I will buy everything for my kid and then just leave zero. Like there's nothing left for Harleen for the budget dollars. But I think we also, as women, we have to make sure we treat ourselves. Like not... I mean, when I treated myself back in the days with $700 pair of shoes,
that's
like,
different.
I mean, that's stupid. But now I won't do that. But I mean, if my lifestyle right now is to work out and my like leggings had holes, like, I think I could spare the $15 to doing it. And for all the mamas out there or any entrepreneurs listening, like truly, you have to invest in yourself in order to get that back. So
tell them what you told me when I told you that I spent $40 on a sports bra. Remember?
What did I tell you? Fuck, I tell you a lot of things. What did I tell
no,
you?
you were like, you know what? If it makes you feel good and you're investing in the way you feel, then it's, you know, you just do it.
Yeah, because
and I was like, okay, add to cart.
You know what? I am a very avid believer of, you know, it might be a little expensive, but damn, I feel good in it. And that's it. And it's a good investment. Ask yourself if you feel good with it, is it a good investment? Right? A lot of people people have given me grief about our trainer. Oh, he's this and this and this. I was like, I don't care what you say, but my trainer makes me feel good and I feel fantastic. Or whatever coaches that I'm working with, I'm like, until you try it, you will never go back to like the old stuff. Like you just won't. Yeah. Because you need to like level up in some other ways. So I was reading a statistic with the CPA Canada that 1 in 3 Canadians live paycheck to paycheck. Would you blame that on poor spending habits or just not enough education on how to manage their money? Or is there like literally just no money for them?
I definitely think that it's an education thing. I think with social media, it's so easy for people to get sucked into that idea of, the next big thing. We have to do all the things. And pandemic might have changed it a little bit for people because we weren't traveling the same way and having that FOMO of like the travel and the events and the parties. But I think a big part of it is just not having enough knowledge in terms of, making good buying decisions. So like, credit card debt that got out of hand, and now you're slowly trying to build your way out of that and things like that. Because I don't necessarily think that there's that much underemployment, but I also would say in Canada that probably is an issue, right? And I think through pandemic, it's just been a fact that, people have lost their jobs or they're working less than they have been previously. And it's just created a whole bunch of extra financial strain. So I'm worried about what the statistics will look like in another year when we start to see all that data start to roll out.
It was scary for sure. Like this pandemic was scary for like all financials, anything. And I think I think there's a lot of people that made really poor financial decisions when they didn't need something in particular and they took it on because it's like, that's going to come back to you. Like, it's not going to come back now, but it's going to come back in like a year or two. And it's, that money's got to come somewhere, right? So, do you think that schools should be like a primary in at least in high school on how to manage your money or how to be more money savvy? How old do you think we should start teaching our children?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that we should start talking about it as soon as your kid starts having conversations with you, right? Because to me, it's the fact that when it's a conversation that you're just used to having, it's not a big deal, right? And so when you've heard people talk about, well, when we go to the grocery store, we buy our groceries, we have to pay for them. We work so that we can make money. Like, you don't have to go and say like how much money you make every year and you obviously want to be very cognizant of you're not wanting to put your money stories onto your children, right?
Sorry, I have a story to tell after this, but I want you to continue.
Yeah, but like it's those things because you know how you feel when you've had conversations that you can be safe in, right? You're more likely to bring those things forward when you need that support. And to me, if we start talking about these things in junior high and high school, talk about credit cards. Well, how do they work? There's good credit. There's a way to build it up safely. Just because a bank wants to give you $10,000 in credit capacity, you don't need it. Like those kind of things that it's like your bank will be like, oh, great, you made all your payments for one whole year. So now we're going to give you an extra couple $1,000s, right? And as a teenager or a young adult, like you don't have the capability yet to be really aware of what that long-term implication is, right? And you kind of have to talk about it more in terms of like, if you can't afford it, you can't afford it yet. Like, have a bigger idea of saving and really determining what your values are, right? It's easy to go and shop and buy everything, but does it actually bring you joy? So when you're talking about the leggings and the trainer and coaches and things like that, like to me, those are investing in yourself. Those are things that you look at and you're like, hell yes. Like I will do away with like Starbucks for a month to make sure that I can pay for that, for an expensive sports bra or new shoes or whatever it is. But that's because you start to see those values in alignment and you don't know that when you're 18, right?
And I think we all wish that we were told that.
Me too. No one had no one. I was living at home. I could have the hills. Yeah.
And also like, what year did you graduate?
High school?
Yeah.
2003.
Okay. So did either of you have a class called Career and Life Management or COM for short?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. No. So that was bullshit. Like
it was.
We had
bullshit.
Yeah, we had to take it and as the name states, Career and Life Management. So you would think you would get some life skills out of that. No, nothing.
What did you do?
This is literally what they made me do, okay? They were like, okay, think of what your job is going to be, how much you're going to make, and then put all your, like, categorize all your spending or whatever, and then see how much you have left over or whatever. But like, it was so vague. Like, we cut out pictures from a magazine, like, oh, I want this bed, I want this blah, blah, blah. And then we have to put how much it costs. But that is not real life. Like,
No.
it was such a waste of time, that stupid class.
I want to add to that, because first of all, when you have the class that I had was, you had to they partnered you with a guy, so you guys were married, so you had this like egg, and you had to like
that's a red flag right there. I'm sorry, like, not everyone is gonna get married, but anyways, keep going.
But that's how they partnered us up. It's like, you guys have this household income, blah blah, and of course people are like fucking saying, I'm a doctor, I'm a this. I'm like, okay, if I picked to say I was a doctor, no one fucking told me I had student loan debts to pay for, right? But instead it was like, oh, your budget looks good, but like, how long would it take? What is all these criteria? They didn't. And they're like, oh yeah, that looks good. You're going to succeed in life. And when I get
it's
here,
bullshit.
you know what? I threw a fucking party when I finished paying my student loan. Mm-hmm. And then what I loved about the letter the student loan people gave is like, congratulations, you paid off your student loans. If we find an error anywhere in between, we can come back and get you. It's like, that's not my problem. It says I paid you, but no one taught us any of that, and they should teach us that.
Yeah, and I think it's not that you can teach you can't teach everybody every financial implication, but like, let's start with some of the basics. Like,
yes.
what are credit cards like? Why do we pay taxes? Like, talk about student debt and things like that, because we've put so much pressure on, like, you graduate high school, you go to some kind of post-secondary, you get a job, you buy a house, you get married, and then you retire. And it's like, but how do you do all that? And do people, like, is that what people really want? Do they even understand, like, how do I accomplish those things anymore? Right?
Yeah.
Like, you're just pushed out at 18 or whatever it is, and you're given all these freedoms, and then you make a couple of bad choices, and
it's going to affect you
for
for
decades.
a long time.
Yeah.
All those
Guilty.
implications. Yeah.
I'm guilty.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
Me too. I was stupid back then.
I was
just-
stupid. Well,
remember trips to Vegas, fucking Gucci
like-
store.
I'm like calling her. I'm like, I'm really sad right now. What do you want to do? Oh, okay. Fucking drop like $1,500 in one day. And here, like, I wasn't even making the kind of money that I'm making him today. Who the hell did I think I was?
Right?
Dropping $1,500 on like things we didn't need.
No.
You know?
Yeah.
And again, it's all a matter of perspective, right? Because now we look at it and we understand what the world costs, and we understand, like, all these things that might just pop up. So we can't really put all that weight into a high school student either, because they just won't understand, right? Like, we can say it and they'll be like, okay.
Yep.
But I think if we at least give them that basis, they're like, oh, okay, we talked about this a couple of times. Like, let's dive into this a little bit more. Let's ask a couple questions. Let's not just sign it because that's what everybody does.
Yeah. So going back to, like, teaching children this, because you're a mom of 2 and your kids are really young. I'm a mom of a 4-year-old, and it's interesting because I want to know how you talk to Jaden about his finances, because he's almost 16. But with my daughter, so what my spouse and I talked about before was that when we give her an allowance, we're going to say, okay, this is how much you get, but we're going to tax her and then be like, but this is how much you actually get, and this goes, like, basically to this and that. And we're going to say, oh, it's going to go to sports or whatever, right? When in reality, when she's older, it's going to go to, like, your pension and whatever. But we're still going to keep that money on the side. So I mentioned that to somebody, and they were like, why would you do that? And I'm like, well, I don't know. It's just kind of teaching her how the world is. Like, you get a paycheck and you're like, shit, I made a lot of money. And then they tax your ass and you're like, I actually didn't make a lot of money, you know? And then at the end of the year, you still owe money.
Yeah.
So I wanted to soften the blow. But do you think that was the right thing to do? And what would you do with your own children?
Yeah, I actually love that idea. And I think it's one of those things that in your house, you're going to have those conversations and find out if everybody involved is kind of on side with it. I do think something like that is an amazing idea, because it does teach reality, right? And it's the fact that, like, you know, our 4-year-olds don't need to understand taxes, but they do have to understand that, like, just because you get $10 doesn't mean you just get $10, right? And I was just even thinking about allowance in terms of, I think sometimes we use it as we're quick to use money as good and bad. So like debt is
Oh,
bad,
yeah.
money is good. And it's like, okay, so if you had a bad week, then you don't get your allowance. And it's like, well, but now you're starting to teach like good and bad with your money. And so then it's thinking about like, okay, like maybe we need to have more of an agreement. So it's like you need to, you know, make your bed every morning or whatever it is, which is age appropriate for your child. And then it's like being an employee. If you're not holding up your end of the bargain, eventually you may no longer get an allowance, right?
Yeah.
It can't be a punishment to get it or not get it. So to me, it's just so interesting to see how these things evolve. And as you have kids and as they get older, you kind of look at it and it's like what maybe worked before now has to evolve into something new.
Well, technically, it is a punishment if we don't work, we don't get money. So,
True.
hypothetically, just kidding. That's just I'm being dumb.
Well, so how do you talk to Jaden about it? Because I'm curious because he's a teenager and I have a 4-year-old.
So, I think we talked about money for sure because one, I was a single mom and every dollar counted and like it was, you know, like I had to make sure that I was always in the plus. Like before I leaped, because when I got separated, I actually moved in with my brother. I must have budgeted before I moved out and I kept getting the same number, but I was so terrified to jump and I was like, if I don't do this, I'm fucked. We're going to be homeless. Anyways, so, you know, when he was little, I would teach him certain things. Probably not ideal because he's so advanced in certain things. But now that he's 16, he made a comment about money and he was like, well, if this gamer made XYZ, I was like, cool. I was like, because he'll come down and he'll be like, hi mom, I just need this thing, it's like $69.99 whatever game it is. So he's like, but I can make this money. I was like, okay, cool, how much do they make? They're like, you know, if I make this, we're set for life, mom, we're set for life, $2 million. I was like, okay. I was like, $2 million is not a lot of money. I was like, yeah, it is. It's $2 million. I was like, okay, well, Jaden, you want to pay your mom's mortgage? Okay, give me like $400,000. Just give me that. I said, oh, wait, hold on. Let me back up for 1 second. $2 million. You're now in the tax bracket of XYZ because anyone who makes over 6 figures to 7 figures, the government's going to tax you here.
Yeah.
So basically that's half. So I'm just going to take $1 million away from you. Okay. I said, on top of that, you just bought this house. Oh, okay. You want to pay it off? Cool. Okay. So every year, the government also wants you to pay property tax. Yep. So that's another cool $2,500. And then by then I was subtracting so much shit. And you know what he said to me? He's like, how come they're not teaching me this at school? He was like, I don't want to move out. That's exactly what he said.
That's so good. He said that though.
Yeah. And he was just like, I said, I told you $2 million isn't enough money. And then he's just like, so you're telling me if I made $100,000, I'm not taking $100,000 home. I said, no, because I don't take that home. Like I wish, because we could be living at, you know, XYZ or whatever. Right. And then he was like, sometimes my son's really good at managing money. Sometimes he's really bad. But I think I enable him sometimes because he's my only child, that there's always resources. But we've gotten him his own bank card already. And I said, I'm not giving. And then I was mad because there's no overdraft. And I said, Jaden, I said, because his grandparents have an account there too. So he has 2 bank accounts. I said, why the hell are you keep draining the bank account that I have with you, but the other one's positive? I think it's because his dad's writing him about it. He manages that one before he manages mine. And I said, well, first of all, you're going to go into debt and you're not even 16 yet because of your banking fees. I'm like, you're going over your banking fees? Have you seen the transaction? $1. You're using your bank card for $1. I was like, and then for each transaction you make is $1.50. He paid $40 one time in banking transaction. I was so fucking pissed off.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, it's not a lot, but it is a lot for you know what I mean?
It is a lot. It's a lot of.
I have such a pet peeve with bank fees and like interest and things like that.
Yes.
And, like you avoid that, like in the world where you can manage things, you manage that.
Yeah.
How?
You either go get another bank account, you talk to them about why that's not appropriate.
Yeah.
Like you talk to a different bank, like something. Because to me,
are
no.
banks doing that?
It's because they make the money. And you know what? When he said that he doesn't want to move out, that's amazing to hear, because when I was that age, I was like, fuck this, I'm moving out. I could do it. I can make, and like when I was like in my 20s, I was like, I had a job. So I was like, yeah, I can move out. And then I actually did move out not till much later. And then I realized I'm just like, I'm an idiot. I would not have survived.
I also like sometimes, and I remember, I think he was like, God, he was in grade 5 or 6. I can't remember, but he wanted a scooter so bad. And I've always been able to get it, but I got laid off from my job, and I knew I only had enough for, there was no room for error. And like when I had to say, hey, like it's tight right now, he was like, okay. And he was like just fine. He wasn't like, oh, how come all the other kids can have that? Like he's just always been so good. But I also think it's because he always knew it was just me and him, and it was like, because I was a single mom. But it's just funny because he's just like, you don't have to ever work like when you get older. I was like, I'm gonna remember that, Jaden. Like I'm gonna live in your house, and you're gonna pay all the bills. But yeah, so I that's how Jaden and I talk about money, and it's very important. And I tell Jaden, like, before you move out of my house, I want you to be financially smart in what you're doing, because we had to talk about it. Like it's a conversation. Money is a conversation in my house all the time. All the time. It can't be taboo. And I tell Jaden, I was like, you got a budget. I was like, you can't be like, oh shit, I'm like a week into after I got paid, and then I have no money in my bank account. I told him that because I've taken him to work and I've given him money, and he's like, can I borrow? I hate when he's like, so mom, I was wondering if I can borrow. I was like, you can't borrow money when you don't have a job. Think about it, right? Yeah.
So I just want to take this opportunity to give a special shout out again to our episode sponsor, Soko Local, which is an online search engine app similar to Google, but gives you results for local products in your area only, so that you can help support your local businesses. So head to www.sokolocal, that's SOKO local.com, or download the app for iOS or Android today.
Amazing. So I want to go back into like... Sorry, I'm like, I don't know. I'm telling you, I love finance. I love talking about money. So Canada has like all these changing labor markets right now. So it's been difficult for Canadians to plan and secure their future. So it was interesting to learn that the validity is more prevalent amongst women than men with income between 30 and 50,000. What do you think about that?
What was the word that you said? Validity?
Yeah.
Volatility?
Volatility.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I was like, oh, what are we talking about? Yeah. Sorry, just repeat the question now that I know exactly what that word is.
That is more prevalent amongst women than men with income between 30 and 50,000.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so a lot of that has to do with the fact that when it comes to women, they are raising children. We have daycares in the majority of Canada that are incredibly expensive. Yep. So for you to work a job, if you are a single mom or if you are part of a family, a lot of times daycare eats away so much of that income. So you probably aren't working, a 9-to-5 job. You might be working something off hours so that a spouse or a partner or other family members can be working different hours so that maybe you're only paying for part-time daycare, or you're able to switch off children and try to reduce those expenses. And so it really means that people are underemployed. And that's where there's a lot of women who are working those jobs in different hours just because that daycare and childcare costs are so expensive.
Mm-hmm. So what advice would you give to those women on how to manage their money, given the fact that they're already in that situation?
It's a hard one. So I've had this conversation with other women, with colleagues and with clients. It's hard because to step away from the workforce because daycare is too expensive only sets women back further. So when we remove ourselves, we're not in line for that promotion. We're not becoming leaders. We're not keeping the workforce balanced because we've stepped away.
It's really not.
And it's so hard because a lot of people look at it and they're like, well, I'll just step away for 3 years while my child gets through like the youngest ages, and then they'll be into school, and then I can go back. And then you go back, but you're not going back to where you were.
There's so many things in between.
There's so many. And it's the fact that, now you're going back in. And even if you know people, you're probably not going right back into where you were, because now you have children in school and they're doing activities and they're out at 1:00 on every Friday or these things. And so it's that constant background noise interfering with your ability to be fully employed.
Yeah.
Right. And it's devastating to see it happen.
It is. Yeah. And I know that most, if not all, our female listeners can relate. And so speaking of relatability, we want to know, and I'm sure our listeners do too, is for someone who is a financial expert, what sort of blunders or mistakes or misconceptions have you made personally when it came to your own finances, and what steps did you take to overcome it?
I've been pretty lucky in terms of I came to Calgary in 2008, and so I've worked in corporate through multiple recessions.
Where did you come from?
Oh, so I was born in Calgary and lived here till I was in elementary school, and then I moved to Saskatchewan.
Okay.
And I came back here after university for a job. And so I worked in oil and gas throughout, the majority of my career. So I've been very fortunate. I've made very good income, and being in finance and accounting, they're not recession proof, but they're much more stable because you always need those people, right? So I've been very fortunate in that regard. But it's been interesting because it almost creates a headspace of being stuck, because you get to a place where you're so secure that you also look around and you recognize that you want to do something different. But it's like, how would you ever step away from that?
Agreed.
So it's so interesting. Like at this point in my career, I'm like, okay, so this isn't what really lights me up anymore, but how do I walk away from it? And the fact that then other people are like, well, you're so lucky to have a job, or you're so lucky to have these things.
Yeah.
So it's interesting from that perspective. I definitely think, there used to be like the more expensive shoes and things like that. I would say the biggest one for myself is that I found it really hard to spend money on myself. So like, I love saving my money. I love spending money on experiences. So travel is a huge one for me, but it's the value of like coaching. So that's one that I really wish I would have recognized a lot earlier. Just because it would have taken me so much further, so much faster. So that's kind of the big one right now. But I think it's just slowing down wherever you're at. So the majority of people that I talk to are right around my age. So young kids to teenagers. And so they're kind of into that next phase of their life where they're not necessarily making the big mistakes, but they're stuck, or they're scared because they made the big mistakes when they were 20. And now they don't know what to do next or how to get out of it. And so it's really having a safe person to talk to. Like, because I grew up, my parents owned a business. We talked about finances probably in a different way than a lot of households did, just because the business was around us, right? So we weren't talking about personal finance, but we always had those conversations. And then at home, my husband and I, we talk about money all the time. And it becomes so familiar and it's so easy. And for a lot of people, they don't have that at home. So they don't have the ability to say what they're worried about or say what they're really excited about. I think we always default to the money being scary and overwhelming, but then we never actually celebrate like when you get a bonus or like you find $20. Like we never celebrate those things with the people around us, because again, we don't talk about money.
Yeah. And right? I'm in that boat. Like I don't know what it is. I think it's because it can bring a lot of stress and changes like the whole vibe of the household. And that is our downfall, like me and my partner, because we're just like, we'll talk about money and then it gets so intense and it's just like, okay, well, that's your money. It isn't my money or whatever. Right. And he is helping me in the sense that like when I was younger, I was stupid with my money. I started working I was in oil and gas as well. And I was on contract. I was a contractor.
Yeah.
I didn't know what the fuck a contractor was. My dad was like, okay, you got to incorporate, you got to get GST, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I don't know any of this. And I was 21. Yeah. So yeah, I'll call her and be like, want to go to Vegas? Because I can afford it. And then in the end, it's like government comes back and says, you actually owe like $6,000. And I was like, what?
I don't have $6,000.
It was fucked. And that was my biggest blunder, right? Because nobody told me that. But I think because of that, I'm just so jaded and scared about my finances because of what happened, because I was just so fucked up about it. And so what my spouse does now, he's like, okay, you know what? I'm going to let you handle all the finances for the entire house. And I was like, why would you do that? You want us to like dig us a hole. And he's like, no, I trust you. And you know that you can't fuck it up. So I know that you'll be okay with it. And just like her, I'm good at managing the money for the household because it scares me to death to go into debt and not be able to put food on the table, right? Yeah. But when it comes to my own money, I'm just like, yes, I will buy that $40 sports bra. But and it's just being scared, I think.
Yeah. And the thing is that scary feeling, it weighs on us mentally, right? Like that's the story that's running around in the back of your brain, and it never really slows down. And that's where I always want people to get into their money and get curious about it, because the more you do, the more confidence that you build up, right? So if you're running the finances for the next year, in 10 months, you'll be like, oh, this is no big deal. Like, I can do all of this. Versus today, you're like, oh, shit. Like, I don't even know where to start. Like, what's the login and password to this? Like, I don't know. And so the more that you do it, but I love that your partner is kind of putting it on you that, like, no, like, get into this, because it is so easy to just kind of shut down on it. Yeah. And yet all we're doing is making it harder for ourselves, right? Like,
I did not want to do it.
No.
I'm just like, oh, we're going to be homeless in like in a year. But obviously I can't do that to my family. So I think he knew that too. That was the bottom line. It's like, you have to keep our family afloat, and that's a big responsibility. So I know you're going to do it. So
yeah. Don't put so much pressure on yourself, because you are part of a team. So like, ask those questions. And I mean, that's when you ask those questions, that's when you start creating that dialogue. Like, I think everybody thinks that they have to go home and have these money conversations, and like they dive into like the big, deep things, and then it goes sideways really fast, because money's emotional, right? Like, we talk about it, and like there are feelings that come up that you're like, what was that? Right? Or somebody else's reaction, you're like, oh shit, like we were just talking about how to split lunch, like, things like that. And so I'm like, no, like just go and like ask little questions, right? Like talk about like, oh, natural gas prices might increase this winter, so do you lock in your rate? Like things like this that are just, they're general conversations that aren't loaded, and yet they're a little deeper than just like, did you pay the bill? Right?
Oh, yeah. So speaking of, talking about finances with your spouse, what do you like? Do you think that if one person makes more money than the other, that it's their responsibility to shoulder a little bit of the finance, versus, do you think that creates resentment within a relationship?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that you have to have those conversations within your relationship, right? Because everybody feels differently about it. And some people still would be like, no, we split everything 50-50, or no, we split it, 80-20 or 60-40 or whatever that balance is. But having that conversation acknowledges what everybody's doing. And I think that's where, maybe you get that joint bank account and everybody puts their allocation in, and all of the expenses are paid from there. Because when my husband and I first started dating, at the end of the month, he's like, okay, so you owe me half of the rent, and you owe like these things. And he said afterwards, he's like, I hated that exercise. Like, it was so weird to tell you like what you owed me at the end of the month. And I was like, and to me, I was like, oh, thanks. Like, let me pay my portion. Like, I was happy to contribute. And he's like, no, it was such an awful exercise. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, so interesting how the perspective is so different, because
it is
like when it was the other way, because just depending who paid what in a month, it could go either way, right? And so for me, like, it didn't really faze me to be like, oh, you owe me whatever, right?
I have a problem asking people. I have no problem asking for money wherever. But when it comes to people in my circle, I'm like, hi, you owe me like $50. And I'm pretty sure there's people that still owe me money, but I haven't said anything, because it's like, well, you know what? I mean, what's fucking $70? But then I realized $70
What's $70?
I was like, what's $70 times however many fucking times I let that slide?
Do I owe you any money?
No,
it's like you're like looking at me. You're just like, there's people who probably still owe me money.
No,
and I'm like,
she's actually really good. And I was like, oh, by the way, I'm sending you this. I was like, oh, I didn't even remember you.
I don't like owing people
I was like, I don't even remember. I think it's because a lot of the times it's very reciprocal with us, and it's just like, just get me next time. And plus, like, that $10 isn't really going to break my bank account. It's fine. So the next question I was going to lead up to, and maybe because this was part of my situation, and I said to Giselle, I was like, once you get married, I was like, make sure you have your own savings on the side. I don't know if that's like the right thing or kind of advice, but when I became a single, like when I split with my partner, we weren't married, I was fucking broke. He had everything. I literally gave 1,000% of everything. I paid his fucking debt off before we moved into the house. We did this, and I walked out of $800 in my bank account and a bunch of fucking debt we accumulated when we bought the house together. Like when I look at it now, I would take this mic and bang my head because I should have prepared for that. As much as we don't want to prepare for a split, divorce, whatever, but man, I have seen a lot of people go freaking broke when they break up. Not just marriages, like they break up. They can't even afford to have like live in an apartment or something because it was so joined. Like what advice can you give to women, or I guess men, everyone in general, like when you go into a partnership and even in a marriage?
Yeah, it's such a huge thing, and it's interesting to bring it up because when you talk about it, a lot of times people will be like, well, so now you're planning for us to break up.
Yeah,
right.
And so negative.
It sounds so negative and so jaded. But then I'm also a big believer in insurance, right? You buy life insurance and you buy home insurance and things like this in case of worst case scenarios, because you want to take care of people. So when you talk about, that separate savings account, maybe it's not the breakup savings account. It's like, no, this is like for me to take care of myself. This is me to travel with my girlfriends or my buddies down to baseball games or Vegas or whatever it is. And so I think it's almost more that perspective of, having that little nest egg that it is, your personal rainy day fund. So it's not like for the roof necessarily, but at least having something that's set aside for you that you can access, or whatever that looks like, whether it's, credit cards that are separate or whatever you're comfortable with. And then for a lot of people now, they're going into marriages with those prenups, because then at least they're being very solid in like, this is what we're bringing to the relationship.
I think it's important. I at first I was like, no, I wasn't against it, but now after like Jaden's dad, after that I smart, and I was like, I was 24 years old. I was smart with my money. And by then I was like, nope, it's almost, I went 360, which is kind of bad because guys are just like, you don't need men. I was like, I actually don't. I don't need anyone to pay my bills, but if you want to, you
look
can.
where you are now. So I want to go into some audience questions because, like, as you know, we opened up our poll to our audience, so we got quite a few. So,
oh, that's exciting.
Yeah. So the first one is, I have 2 kids with a big age gap, so each kid has different wants and needs. For example, my 2-year-old needs diapers and my 8-year-old always wants the latest gadgets. As financial head of my household, how do I budget for each child, myself, and my husband's needs without going overboard?
So that's a good one, because budgeting is one of those things that, again, people either love it or they hate it, but you have to find a way that you're going to do it consistently. And consistently isn't like every day and stressing yourself out, but it's looking at it and finding that balance of knowing what your household needs and what those extras are. So when it comes to, diapers, those are a necessity. When it comes to some of the gadgets and things like that, it's like, okay, so start talking about it. Let's save up our birthday money. Let's save up our Christmas money. Let's have an allowance. And if the gadget they want is $20, well, maybe it takes a month of allowance to buy it. And I think it's that opportunity to talk about it in your household. And again, keeping it light, like your little kids, keep it age appropriate in terms of, talking about the gadgets that they want, because you don't have to buy them a new gadget every week. And if you find yourself buying a lot, okay, then turn it around and see, can you donate something? Like, get your kid involved in that process of, are there toys that they could be selling on garage sale or some of those things, to think about consumption even. Like, I just think of all the things that we have in our house and how often we're like, oh my goodness, there's too much, and you're ready to give it all away. And so when it comes to budgeting, think about like, okay, so maybe you do those at Christmas and birthday and Easter. So you kind of break it up quarterly so the kids feel like they're still getting the things, or that they're actually making their own progress and saving towards those things.
Okay.
Okay.
So another audience question is, what are some resources for a busy small business owner mama like myself who doesn't have time to go to school to learn about finances?
Yeah, so a good place to start is a lot of times all the provinces have their own small business commerce department. So Alberta Entrepreneurs is a good one where they have kind of everything for startup businesses right to established businesses. And then a big website is BDC,
Yes.
Business Development Bank of Canada. And they have an amazing set of resources for all different sizes of businesses, but you basically can go in and find whatever your question is or whatever you're wanting to kind of figure out more within the business. It has great tools that are short. So there may be like 4 or 5 steps. And if you want to learn more, it kind of links everything. But I find it to be a great resource to go to really learn a lot from a very credible source. So that's the big thing is don't just start Googling it. Like reach out to an expert.
Reach out to Kristin.
It's not worth your time to Google because an hour later you'll have learned nothing and be frustrated.
Yeah. That sounds familiar. Okay. Okay, so next one is, how do you navigate kids who want all the things but not giving them the mindset issues we had? I think that was kind of like the other question you answered.
Yeah, again, I think it's having those conversations. And if you're in the position that you still want to give your kids all the things, I think really put that onus on like, okay, so we're going to go buy this next week. What toys can we donate? Or like, I think getting them in that headspace, that understanding that they're not necessarily lucky, but like we are in a place that we can do this, but not everybody is. And so having just a bit more awareness of the bigger picture of like, not everybody gets a brand new toy every week or whatever it is.
So everybody always talks about retirement, and you should, and then they even tell you how much like it takes to retire. So somebody asks, is there such a thing as starting to save for retirement too late? And what advice do you have for those in this boat that are starting in like even in their 40s?
Yeah. So the best time to start, if you didn't start already, is just to start right now, which is cliche, but every dollar that you put in today, it starts gaining interest, right? And so even today, if you're feeling underemployed or you're waiting because you think I'll get a promotion next year and next year I can do more, just start now. And it doesn't have to be big money, because sometimes that's overwhelming, right? It's easy to look at it and be like, oh, I'm way behind. Everybody else is doing these things. But if you just start small, get it started, because over the long term, it will still do better if you start today versus if you start in a decade, even if you put a bit more money in. And the bigger thing too is look at what your work offers. So some of those corporations, they have retirement matching, they have pension plan matching, share purchase plans, so things like that. So if your employer offers like a 5% RSP contribution, take that. So you're going to put 5% into your RSP, but your employer will match that. So that's like giving yourself a 5% raise, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And you're not being taxed on that dollar if it goes directly from your corporation to your RSP. And so those are the things to look for. It's like, okay, look for those little tricks to help, bounce yourself a little bit further forward.
Perfect. So that's all for audience questions, but we had a really good conversation today. Like we learned so much. I can't wait to go home and talk about it. But we also want to have a little fun with you.
Yeah.
We didn't tell you this. So we were going to play, like we had the pleasure to know the professional side of you, but we want to get to know you a little more personally. So we're going to play 5-second rule. Are you familiar with that?
No.
Okay. So you have 5 seconds to name 3 things in each category.
Okay.
Should I set my timer?
Dun, dun, dun.
No pressure. No pressure.
I'm so nervously excited.
Give us your credit card. No, I'm just kidding.
What's your credit card number?
What's your credit card number?
All right. Ready? You want to just go back and forth on these?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I'll go first. And name 3 things you spend too much money on when you know you shouldn't.
Clothes, shoes, and alcohol.
Me too. Name 3 of the best investments one can make.
Coaches, retirement, and rainy day funds.
Name 3 of your guilty pleasures.
Ooh, coffee, wine, and reality TV.
I love this. 3 of your pet peeves.
Feet, the word moist.
Bank fees.
Oh, I love that.
Like you said earlier, you're like, that's my pet peeve is bank fees.
Yeah, that's a good one.
All right. 3 of the worst Halloween candies.
Ooh, those little caramel squares, like the weird hard ones, raisins, and suckers. They're just kind of a waste of candy to me.
Right.
Name 3 things that are always in your purse.
Ooh, lipstick, money, and probably a granola bar.
Obviously money. She's a financial.
Yeah. If you didn't have money, I'd be like, Kristin.
3 things that always make you cry.
My kids, sad movies, and
Your kids again.
yeah, I have 2 kids. So
My other kid.
one for good stuff and one like
Yeah.
sad crying and like happy crying.
Name 3 foods you wouldn't get paid to eat.
Honestly, I don't know. It'd have to be something really weird because I try almost everything. Maybe like chicken feet or like frog legs to me aren't very appealing. Otherwise, no, I eat.
Shit, we should have had like 3 things so she could have eaten. Next time we're going to do that.
We're going to fear factor it up.
I'm gonna do it. That's awesome.
3 things you would save in a fire.
It's okay. Your insurance will pay for it. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
Yeah. My laptop, probably all my notebooks, and then my family.
Oh, it's out? Oh, the camera's dead?
So we're having technical difficulties, and Jizzy's sitting on my lap. I'm quite enjoying this.
I have to pee. Okay.
Don't pee on my knee.
All right, let's fast
Okay,
forward
finish
to
the whole
we'll
thing
do the
already.
last 5.
Okay.
Yeah? Okay. 3 excuses to avoid sex.
I'm tired. I have a headache.
Did you get a raise?
Just kidding.
The kids are going to be up too early.
Good one. I'm going to use those.
Name 3 places for a quickie.
Ooh, the shower, the kitchen, garage.
Would you have sex in a pool of money?
Ooh, that would be wonderful.
You just gave her an idea.
I mean, it feels really dirty. Like money,
okay, you can
money
shower
is
after.
so gross, but yes.
Name 3 Disney Pixar movies.
Ooh, Inside Out, The Little Mermaid, and The Life of Pets.
Name 3 ridiculous reasons why your kids have tantrums.
Ooh. Last night it was because the stars on the clock turned off.
Oh, God.
The grow clock.
Yeah, the grow clock. Supper didn't include a tablet or not wanting to wear pants.
I throw tantrums for not wanting to wear pants too.
Well, take your pants off right now.
Name 3 characters from Sesame Street.
Ooh, Bert, Ernie, and Big Bird.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right.
so we've reached the end, and we're getting cued to say to hurry up because the other camera's going to die. Thank you so much, Kristin, we had so much fun. 10-9. Okay, go.
Okay, but before we go, we have one last question for you.
Okay.
With your passion for helping others achieve their dreams and financial freedom and confidence, what advice do you want to pass on to your own kids at their current age right now to lead them to be financially confident?
Ooh, just to be curious and ask the questions. So dig in and practice. It's not as hard as we think.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, so
What
any
up?
last words?
That's it. I'm enjoying this. Next episode, we're just
For Christmas, I would like...
what you want, girl. Okay. Well, thank you so much again, Ham Fam.
Thank you guys so much. So like Har said, we're out of time. Thank you again for reaching out to us, Kristin. It was an absolute pleasure to meet you and have you here with us. Thank you so much. So until next time, Ham Fam, remember to love yourself even on the hardest days.
Wow.
Bye.